The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome to Sister Speak. Today you're joined with me, Lamissa.
And me, Maryam.
Lovely to have you, Maryam.
Thank you. Feels like old times.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Me and Maryam have been doing this show for a while, so it does take us back. Okay, so thank you all very much for tuning in to today's show. Today we're going to be talking about confidence. But yeah, just before we get into everything, Maryam, for people who are listening to our show for the first time, what's our show about?
Yep, so our show is a platform for Muslim girls to voice their own opinions on current events and issues and form discussions on general topics such as religion, culture, politics and identity. We want to note that all opinions and views are our own and we respect all other opposing views.
Exactly. And just to let you guys know, if you do want to share your thoughts with us on any of the topics that we discussed today, we will be live on Facebook Live and YouTube, I believe. And also if you want to text or WhatsApp in, you can do so on 07779 481822, and you can also call in on 01582 481822. We'd love to hear what you guys have to say. We're going to go straight into our thoughts for the week. So this is a part of our show where we discuss our thought for the week. So, Maryam, what's your thought for the week?
I think my thought of the week is something that has obviously been happening around the world, in Turkey and in the border of Syria. We know that the death toll has risen to 47,000 people. And I think it's so devastating to see this, because when you hear that there's another tremor, I think it just broke my heart, because these people are just recovering and then another earthquake happened. Yeah. And whilst this devastation is happening, I do feel like a lot of people's faith is also being consolidated by the stories that you're hearing. I'm sure some people have heard about the stories that are circulating on social media where children are being asked, "When you're not hungry over the last few days," and they say they recollect their memory and they say, there was a sister that was giving me food and water. And I read another story where a child said that, were you scared? And they said, no, whenever I was scared, someone came to hug me. And of course, as Muslims, we believe that this is the angels. And to me, I think that's such a profound prompt to reflect, because Ramadan is about to come in 1 month, and I just think if you take a step and you think about it, these people are under the most devastating circumstances, yet in those devastating circumstances Allah is providing. He has decreed for them to survive, and so therefore He will facilitate them. Under the rubble that they are, and they had no food, no water, it's impossible circumstances, but Allah has made it possible. So for me, it's been a point of reflection just to think about, of course, trying to help the people of Turkey and Syria and try to donate or share campaigns wherever's helping on the ground. But at the same time, I feel like it has really made me feel closer to my faith, because I just see how Allah has really protected these children, have protected the innocent in such impossible circumstances.
And I think that's the thing we need to remember, is that Allah is always there for you, and if He wishes to provide for you, then that's what's going to happen. So subhanAllah, thank you for sharing your thought for the week. And along those lines, I guess I want to say also, I think this calamity actually has shown how we can work together and really try and be generous and try and help the situation that's going on. So many people have, kind of helped fund so many different campaigns to try and help the people of Turkey and of Syria. And there's loads of local kind of fundraisers that are going on in Luton as well, local community efforts that are occurring. So I think all of those kind of just show again the generosity that we have as a community as well, and kind of bring back that faith in humanity almost.
Unity.
Exactly. And so coming up to Ramadan, I think what I want to say is try and remember that even if you feel like you don't have a lot to give, you still have a lot to give. Whether that be through time, whether that be through money, whether that be through so many different other things, we all have something that we can give. So just to try and think about what it is that we can do to make the world a little bit better every single day. I think that's my thought for the week.
It's a very heartwarming thought of the week.
Okay, so that ends our thoughts for the week. If you guys want to share your thoughts for the week, please do contact us. Also, you can get in contact via Instagram. We're on Instagram at Sister Speak. So yeah, drop us a DM. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Drop us a DM.
Okay, so we're going to be moving on to our hot topic, and it is quite a topical one. If you live in the UK currently, you know that loads and loads of public services Some of them we haven't been able to use as frequently as perhaps we would do because of strike action. So lots, whether that be in the hospitals, whether that be the railroads, whether that be, whatever it is, people are striking. I guess the first question I want to ask you, Maryam, is what do you think about striking in general? And what then do you think about authorities and authoritative figures trying to stop people from being able to strike? These are the two questions.
Okay, so I think everyone should have a right to strike.
Why?
I think it's to protect human rights, to protect our rights, to be in the best interest of people. If there was no strikes, then we wouldn't even have a weekend, because that's how it came about. And I think that the strikes that are happening, I think there's a lot of people disparaging doctors and nurses and teachers for striking because they're feeling the pinch in their services. However, we have to think more holistically. I think we need to think in the broader perspective. If we're underfunding our heroes that we clapped for a couple of years ago, if we're not facilitating or providing adequate provisions for teachers who are teaching our next generation, the fundamental strands of our society, if we're not giving them the correct amount of money and we're not giving them the provisions to enable them to do their jobs properly, then how as a society are we going to grow, and how as a society are we going to see its success? Because I feel the priorities should be there. I think the priorities are these, key workers. They're called key workers for a reason. In the pandemic, they were the ones that kept us going. So I do think that having strikes is really fundamental to ensure the interest of not just the people that are working, but the people that are going to be using those services. And whilst that's not being portrayed in the media, I think we just really need to think about the bigger picture, because if your doctors and your nurses and your teachers are underpaid, understaffed, that's going to affect your quality of care, and there's going to be more mistakes happening in those services, not in the expense of the nurses or doctors. It's just because there isn't enough resources to be spread it out. So I definitely think it's really important. I support and I stand in solidarity with everyone that's striking.
I see. In terms of people who might argue that striking can cause an impact on our everyday functionality, we've seen so many disruptions. People are unable to get to work because of railway workers striking. What do you say in response to that? In response to that,
I say that one example, we can see the nurses. The nurses, they predicted this. They predicted there's going to be a lack of resources when the funding was going to be taken away a couple of years ago, and so therefore their voices were not heard at that time. So they are the ones that put this forward, that we need more funding, we need this, we need these facilities. However, that wasn't prioritized, and so therefore we are facing the grunt because of the decisions that were made a couple of years ago, though the nurses provided the evidence that this is what's going to happen. So I do think that there's a lot of anguish against these key workers, but you really have to think about why are they doing this, and you have to think about, if you have your loved one in care, wouldn't you want the person that's taking care of them to be in the best of mental health, the best of, to have quality of care? So I think that people who argue that, your service are being disrupted, yes, it can be quite difficult in the present moment, but you have to think in the long term. This is the future of the country, and this is the future of our for each generation to come. They need to be able to have adequate provisions. So yes, it's difficult for us right now, but it's something that has to take place in the long term.
Interesting. I would have to say I agree, purely because there are very obvious reasons as to why these people are taking such measures, and some people might regard them as extreme. But frankly, I think the cuts that have been made and the situations that our current public services are at, in my opinion, are also quite extremely in desperate need of change. And so because of that, I feel like every single step they're taking, ultimately, like you said, is for the betterment of these particular services. We can't just... I feel like people look at it in terms of individual gain for these individual workers, and I don't think it's an individual thing. It's a very kind of comprehensive thing, looking out for the service in general, whatever service that may be. And fundamentally, it is a right. We have a right to strike. If things aren't going well, we have the right to raise our voices against what we think is going wrong and be able to have a discussion about that. If you're unable to have discussions about that, you're never going to be able to improve the services, and you're never going to be able to improve kind of your working conditions for yourself. And fundamentally, everyone should have that right. In terms of authorities that try and strip people of that right, it's quite a backward move, frankly. And I think, you're never going to get anywhere by stamping on, essentially, and trying to drown out the voices of the people who are doing work every single day to try and make services run. At the end of the day, public services are what everyone is kind of pegged up upon, I guess. Our lives depend on it. Our education, health, transport, these are all things that we rely on day to day. And if these people are saying there's an issue with these particular systems and services, we need to then listen to that and try and figure out how we can make it better instead of trying to drown out their voices.
Yeah, I think as people think, where's the funding going to come? But I think you need to think about, you need to do a little bit more research where funding goes. And if you're happy for your people in authority for their food to be subsidised by you as opposed to children, I think that's where you're going to have to think about your priorities. Of course, it's up to your discretion on what you think about that. But I think we really need to think about who are we looking after in our society, and who are we putting on a pedestal who doesn't really require the support.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we need to kind of think about.
I think we also need to think about who makes the decisions, because I feel like there's a lot of areas where people are making decisions and yet they have no expertise in the area of which they're making decisions for.
Or they don't have the lived experience. And those who do have the lived experience are either smeared to the nth degree, politically speaking, and then they cannot do what the people want. And then there's someone that's very divorced from reality that's going to take those steps.
I think that's the biggest issue. I think people we have are either they haven't had that experience of growing up in what we would class as the norm, or they haven't had to rely on the public services that everyone relies on day in, day out. Either that, or they're making decisions for an area which they've never been involved in. And it's like, if you've never worked in that area, how can I ever trust you to make a decision about that? And yet that happens every single day. And I feel like it's an issue, not just if we talk about in general terms, not just with governments or with politics. It's also an issue, I feel like, day to day in companies, in institutions, for example, in universities. I feel 100%. Like the people who make decisions for students are so out of touch with what it's like to be a student. And they also have this kind of almost like, I don't want to make it sound so harsh, but they almost have a delusion of they know exactly what's going on, and they know exactly how to make a course a certain way because they've been through it in the past, maybe 50 years ago. But it's like times have changed. And when people on the ground who are actually going through certain things are telling you these parts need to change, it's not just to make things easier, it's to make things better. It's not about ease. And I feel like that's the issue that people have, especially those in management. They feel like people just complain, and I don't think that's the case. It's a way of making things better for everyone. We know what we need to make ourselves function better. We know what we need to put out higher quality work. And when that's not listened to by management, when that's not listened to in a political sense by government, I feel like that's when issues start to arise. And you get these kind of problems which are never going to be solved because there's this kind of lack of communication between two ends.
And you see that the people that, work their whole life, for example, doctors have gone on strike, junior doctors, and you see that there's been an increase of people dropping out the profession. That's hugely problematic because the need is still there. And if people are being forced out of the profession because their needs are not being met, then there's a question that's raised where's the priority? Whose priority is it? So I think I definitely feel very strongly about people who are striking. I think we've come to a point where we're made to think that we need to be individualistic because my train is not coming, so therefore I'm going to be angry at people who are striking on train. I'm not getting the services at the hospital, and so therefore I'm going to be angry. And then there's this people are disparaging the people that are the key workers that are going on strike, but they're doing it for you. They're not doing it for themselves, and I think that's what is quite problematic in the way it's being portrayed.
And just to pick up on one of the things that you said about the fact that, people want to leave the profession, I don't think people understand the extent to which, like, how true that is.
Yeah,
so it's
not
you can
just
say
this.
it. It's not even statistics. When I go, so I'm kind of from that field, right? When I go into uni, and when I talk to my peers, and not even just peers, the doctors who are on the wards, junior doctors, the only thing that's on people's minds is how to get out, how to go to different countries. what ways we can kind of bulk up our CVs to try and go to different. This is the experience that I've had after talking to people who are in the area, and it's not my own intentions, I should put it that way. But yeah, these are all the experiences that I've had, and people are very prepped and primed, ready to go, because they don't see a future in the current system because of the working hours, because of the current situation, because of the stress, and one big thing is that they find it sad that they've lived here, they've trained here, everything's done here, this is their country, and they feel like they can't continue here. This is the biggest kind of thing. And if we have the future doctors or the future nurses or the future people, like you said, who are going into the profession already so disheartened, already so like we're ready to get out, that's only going to impact negatively for the years to come in terms of the health service. So I think people don't realise the extent to which that kind of attitude is brewing. And that's why striking is so important, to be able to change all of that so that we can stay. The people who are trained here, they can stay and they can contribute to the health system, and we can continue it and keep it going. And
people don't realise how much of an investment that these people have made to get into the profession. It's not just 1 or 2 years, it's 6 years. It's hard work, and a lot of the times they have sacrificed so much to be our health carers. When they have to go on placements, they're not getting paid. And they're doing it for such a long period of time just so you can be taken care of. And then we're giving them working conditions that are completely opposed to their well-being. Sounds quite ironic to me. So I think it's really, really important that we stand in solidarity with people who are striking. And that's not just exclusive to doctors, nurses, teachers, train drivers, any kind of key services that we rely on.
Yeah.
If you feel that your services are being disrupted, then think about how much they sacrifice to make sure that you have that stability.
Yeah. And what is the point that they're having to come to this, It's almost like they have been pushed, because people don't just do that. It's a last resort. I think that's what we need to kind of focus on. In terms of, we've talked a lot about doctors and nurses. Do you think it's ethical for these people to go on strike? I mean, that's a big part of the debate, people are saying, because obviously people's lives get put at risk. So what would you say in response to that?
I think, like you said, it was the last resort. A lot of this was predicted. A lot of this was asked for. And so therefore, why should the blame go on the people that are striking? Because this is something that they've been asking for a very long time. And yes, it is going to be disrupted in terms of people's lives, and education is going to be disrupted. But would you want consistent disruption, or would you want to solve the problem on the surface right now? And I think that's what we have to do. Everyone has to make these sacrifices now to ensure that the future community don't face the same problem. So I think in terms of ethics, I would argue it's very ethical for them to do this, because they're thinking about the wider community. They're not thinking just about the present people.
Yeah, I would agree. I feel like, especially since you're saying this was predicted and people knew this was going to happen, I think it's unethical that they didn't do something about it in the past. The people who could have done something about it didn't do something about it back then. And that's what's led to this. In terms of people's lives being at risk, I think more and more people's lives are being put at risk every day from chronic underfunding. And I think this is the issue that needs to be tackled. This is kind of a very abrupt way of saying, look at the problem. It's right here, right now. You need to see it. And not only that, what I want to say is that, frankly, if we lose... So talking about just the health service in general, this is my opinion. I feel like if we lose the National Health Service, we're going to be putting so many more people's lives at risk, because, frankly, so many people rely on the National Health Service. And half of us, I feel like, me included, like, I wouldn't be able to afford healthcare out of it. Do you see what I mean? I feel like there are so many, especially low-income families, would be put at risk if we didn't have a national health system. Is just my opinion.
And I think that people argue that, okay, well, if it's underfunded, then it needs to be privatized. But I think, okay, again, where has been the priority in government? The pot of money that could have gone to NHS should have been there. So I do think that people really need to learn a little bit more about politics and understand how funding is dispersed, and speak to your MPs. You're a constituent, you have a right to speak to your MPs, to write letters, to get your voice heard. So I definitely think it's a collective kind of stance that we have to take.
And in terms of just making a whole new system, why do we always have to make a whole new system and then problems continue in that new system? It's not like it's going to be problem free. I think a better way to go about it would be to try and
improve
the current system, find the problems, listen to the people who are saying, hello, these are the problems, and then try and solve them. And of course, it's a lot of work. You know, the way I'm putting it, it seems like it's really easy. It's not. Of course, it's a lot of work, but it's about bringing that discussion and trying to actually put the work in to find what the solutions are.
If we have any doctors that are listening or anyone that's been striking, do call us on 01582 481822 or WhatsApp us at 07779481822. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Exactly. But yeah, I guess we are coming to the end of the first half of our show. Just to wrap up the first half, I guess me and Maryam, we both agree with strike action. We believe that, you know, it's there as a right and as a tool to improve services and improve working conditions. But yeah, like Maryam said, please do get in contact with us, you guys. And in the second half, we will be discussing about confidence and how we've managed to kind of build our confidence over the years. So yeah, thank you very much for listening, and inshallah we'll see you in the second half. Assalamu alaikum.
अल्लाह ही अल्लाह किया करो, दुख न किसी को दिया करो, जो दुनिया का मालिक है नाम उसी का लिया करो। अल्लाह ही अल्लाह, अल्लाह ही अल्लाह, अल्लाह ही अल्लाह किया करो, दुख न किसी को दिया करो, जो दुनिया का मालिक है नाम उसी का लिया करो। अल्लाह ही अल्लाह, अल्लाह ही अल्लाह। Just like a sunrise can't be denied, no. Just like the river will find the sea. Oh Allah, you're here, you're always near, and I know without a doubt that you always hear my prayer. सच की राह पे चला करो, दुख न किसी को दिया करो, जो दुनिया का मालिक है नाम उसी का लिया करो। अल्लाह ही अल्लाह, अल्लाह ही अल्लाह, अल्लाह ही अल्लाह किया करो, दुख न किसी को दिया करो, जो दुनिया का मालिक है नाम उसी का लिया करो। अल्लाह ही अल्लाह, अल्लाह ही अल्लाह। So many bright stars like diamonds in the sky. Oh, it makes me wonder how anyone can be blind to all the signs so clear. Just open your eyes, and I know without a doubt you will surely see the light.
तेरी ही दुनिया, तेरी ज़मीन, ये कहकर शाहे तू है करीम मेरे मौला। सुन ले दुआ, हम बेबस है तेरे बिना, रोशन कर जमा।
ऐसा जुल्म न किया करो, दुख न किसी को दिया करो, जो दुनिया का मालिक है नाम उसी का लिया करो। अल्लाह ही अल्लाह, अल्लाह ही अल्लाह, अल्लाह ही अल्लाह किया करो, दुख न किसी को दिया करो, जो दुनिया का मालिक है नाम उसी का लिया करो। अल्लाह ही अल्लाह, अल्लाह ही अल्लाह। अल्लाह ही अल्लाह किया करो, दुख न किसी को दिया करो, जो दुनिया का मालिक है काम उसी का लिया करो। अल्लाह ही अल्लाह, अल्लाह ही अल्लाह, अल्लाह ही अल्लाह किया करो, दुख न किसी को दिया करो, जो दुनिया का मालिक है काम उसी का लिया करो। अल्लाह ही अल्लाह, अल्लाह ही अल्लाह, अल्लाह ही अल्लाह, अल्लाह ही अल्लाह।
Assalamu alaikum, this is Atif Nawaz and you're listening to an Inspire FM podcast.
Assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome to Sister Speak. We've got Lamissa and Maryam in the studio here today. Before the break, in the first half we were talking about strike action and we talked a bit about our thoughts for the week, and then this week in the main topic, so in the second half, we're going to be talking about confidence. Basically a bit about how we developed our confidence and the importance of confidence in professional settings as well as personal settings. I guess first things first, Maryam, what does confidence mean for you?
Wow, that's a very loaded question. I think confidence for me is being content with who I am, validating my own feelings and my own experiences, and believing that I have potential and believing in myself fully.
I think that was a very comprehensive answer to a very loaded question. I think I would agree with you. I feel like confidence is just having that belief in yourself and in your abilities.
And valuing yourself. I think that's really important.
Definitely. I feel like you can't effectively almost get your opinions across and what you have to say or do what you want to do if you don't value yourself and you don't have that belief in your own abilities. That's what confidence means for us. So what does confidence mean for all of you listening in? If you do want to let us know what confidence means for you, please do text or WhatsApp in on 07779 481 You can also call in on 01582 481 So continuing on with our discussion, I mean, would you describe yourself as a confident person?
I think it's an ongoing process. I think I've become more confident, but I wouldn't necessarily describe myself to be a confident person, though people externally may think that she's on a radio show, she hosts radio shows, and I've done all these amazing things. I think for me it's always about development, and I'm still growing into the person I am.
Okay, interesting.
So I don't think I can fully say that I'm a confident person because that's not true to how I feel.
Okay, but it's something that you're working towards?
I'm definitely working towards it.
Okay, interesting. I mean, if you were to compare yourself in the past, what things would you say have made you feel more confident, or in what ways do you feel more confident?
Oh, very nice question. I think comparing to the past, so I think the company around me has definitely elevated my confidence, and on the contrast of that, the company I had before were really draining me and really belittling me and made me feel that I'm quite inferior. And so once I removed that, and surrounded myself with people who are doing amazing things, who are passionate, who value me, who value what I have to say, I think that really boosted my confidence, and then that gave me the ability to challenge myself and go beyond my comfort zone and try new things, and then that in a way helped me to continue this journey, because I really enjoyed just doing new things and I continue to do it. So I really did think, for me personally, it started off with company, and having good company has really helped me to gain confidence, because it's just the energy that you have around you. If you have good positive energy, then you feel the motivation to do good things as well.
Yeah.
So for me, that has been my journey in confidence. And I think comparing to what I was before and now, and even I'm sure, Lamissa, you have seen as well a huge drastic change. I think I have become a lot more confident. I think the value and the belief I have in myself has grown substantially, because I know exactly what I want, and I know I'm just trying my best, and that's all that counts.
Wow. I find it so interesting. I'm glad that you have developed yourself and you feel so much stronger in your own abilities. And like you said, I definitely have seen that change over the years as well. But I guess I find it interesting that you've described confidence in relation to others. So you said it's due to your company changing mainly, and I think a lot of people have seen confidence as a self kind of attribute, and maybe not connecting it to the company that's around them. I mean, in terms of, what ways does company really affect how confident you feel?
Oh, is that the question?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I think for me, because I had such a negative experience, I think that's why for me the contrast was effective for me. Whereas if you have had positive experiences, I don't think that would be the same experience for someone else. So I think that's why the contribution that I have to my confidence today is by the people around me, is because I lacked it before. Yeah,
definitely. And actually thinking back on it now, I feel like confidence has everything to do with the people around you. If you have people around you who are always, because then we see it in people who are also overly confident, and it's often because they had people around them who are always boosting them and always being yes people. So that's very true. And if you always have people around you who are, like you said, belittling you or not kind of giving importance to you as a person or valuing you as a person, then that's obviously going to affect you and the way you think about yourself. So 100%. Should I answer the question too?
Of course, go ahead.
In terms of whether I feel confident or not, and would I describe myself as a confident person? I think it's quite interesting. I feel like I'm not overly confident, but I feel like I have belief in my abilities, or I try to.
I would describe you as a very confident person.
Really?
Yeah, definitely. That's my first impression. My first impression was she's a very confident girl, and that was something that I just kind of inferred the way you were speaking, the way you upheld yourself. And I definitely saw the belief in yourself from the very beginning in 2017, people. That's how long ago.
Wow. I appreciate that, Maryam. I feel like from a young age, actually, I've been put in situations where I've not known anyone. So I feel like changing schools actually made that change. Because in Luton, you very much know everyone that you're around. You see them like every day. Some of them live in your area, that type of thing. And I feel like there's a thing where you can grow up with the same type of people all the way up until like sixth form. And it can be a good experience. It can be a bad experience. I don't know. I didn't have that experience. But when I was going from junior school to high school, I had to move schools. And at that point, I didn't know anyone. Like I knew literally zero people. And I feel like that experience kind of brought me out of my shell a bit more. Because you're in an environment where you have to make friends and you have to talk to people, and I feel like that's, in terms of social settings, is what made me a bit more comfortable and a bit more confident. In terms of professional settings, I feel like confidence always comes from your preparation and your ability. So if you feel like you've prepared for something a lot, you will still feel that slight nervousness and a bit of kind of, have I done enough? I feel like that's inevitable. But you will also have this kind of foundation and backing where you feel like I have, even though I'm still feeling this way, I still know that I've done this much work for this. And so hopefully, when it comes to whatever it is you need to do, that confidence will just easily come out because of the preparation that you've done. That's in a professional setting, I feel like.
I feel like that's applicable to anything. If you prepare for something and you're consistent, even if it's small amounts, then the compounding effect, you will see it. So I think that's a very good way to kind of approach things, especially if you feel nervous about something. And even especially if you lack confidence, if you just work on it day by day and you make it manageable for yourself, you will slowly build that confidence because you become familiarized. Because I think a lot of confidence sometimes is about uncertainty. You don't know the outcome. You have that fear of the unknown. And so therefore, if you prepare yourself and you know that, okay, I've actually created the requisites to be able to do this, then you know within yourself that you've done all you can.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where your confidence will come from. 100%. I feel like in professional settings, that's kind of where confidence comes from. More on the personal side, I mean, how confident do you feel, for example, if there was a room full of people, you didn't know anyone? How confident do you feel in yourself? How confident do you feel walking in that room and being like...
So that's really interesting because a couple of weeks ago, I went to this event by Muslim makers, and they just, they're a space where they create discussions and roundtables for people in tech, Muslims in tech.
Oh, okay.
And this is like the first time I went to an event where I didn't know anyone. And I sort of felt this anxiety, social anxiety. Who will I speak to? I don't know anyone, because last year I was going to things. And the first instance when I was doing patchwork, I didn't know people in the first few sessions, but then the same people came again and again, so I knew people. But this was completely new, and this is a completely unknown. So what I did, someone told me some really good advice. They just said, go to someone and just sit next to them that's smiling and looks smiley, and just start talking. And more often than not, they're probably feeling the same, so they'll be more than happy for you to say hi, because now you just made a bond. And then people just come around, and this is exactly what happened. I just sat next to someone who seemed really nice. She gave that very warm energy. And then we just started talking, and then I was completely fine. So I think it's quite difficult. I feel like COVID as well has kind of robbed me from that ability to kind of just network, because when I was in university, it was just cut short due to COVID. And again, I was lacking confidence anyways. So I think I'm trying to challenge myself. I'm putting myself in a situation. I'm just networking. I don't know people. And I think that comes from self-belief, like believing in what you do, what your purpose is, what your passions are, and just connecting with other people. Because more often than not, we have more similarities with people than differences. And so it's easier to connect with people in that way.
Definitely. And I like that tip was about someone who's smiling, go over, sit to them and talk to them. Because the fact that they're smiling itself, I think, kind of shows that they want to talk to someone and get involved. And in situations where you don't know anyone, just often being that nice smiling person will bring people to you.
I think I naturally just always smile, so that for me is just very effective. So.
Yeah, and I think in those situations where you don't know anyone, it's very likely that no one will know anyone else as well. So everyone's kind of in the same boat. I feel like when I'm in those situations, which I have been quite a few times, I kind of like it. I can't lie.
Of course you do. Of course you do.
I kind of like it. I kind of like not knowing anyone in there, and then it's almost like, you get to learn a bit more about each different person, find out what these people are about, that type of thing. I think I kind of like that in general.
Yeah, for me that's a lot of uncertainty. Like I just don't know, who am I going to speak to? I need someone like to have a conversation with. But I think for me now, I've recognized, okay, this is something that I feel weak in, and so therefore I'm just going to try to use this year to try to keep going to events that I don't know people, and just network, because I feel like introspection is very important, and we talk about this all the time when I speak about it. And I think that's when you start to believe in yourself. It doesn't necessarily mean that you think you're perfect in every single way. You value the things that you're good at, and you value yourself, that you know that I'm going to improve in other areas. And I think that's the kind of conversation I have with myself, and I want to apply that to how I'm going to improve myself in terms of who I meet, what I surround myself with.
I think that's a very healthy way of looking at it. I think a thing that helped me, because it got a lot easier as I feel as I got older, and I think the reason for that is because I simply just stopped caring. I feel like, especially in that new situation, when you see people, a lot of the anxiety that came to me when I was younger is, how are they going to perceive me?
Definitely.
Right? I think that's a big issue that loads of people face, right? It's how are they going to think of me? How are they going to perceive me? And that type of thing. What if they think I'm weird? And I think as I grew older, it's like, if you give me kind of a weird look, or you feel like, we feel like we're not vibing, at the end of the day, you're someone that I've just met just now. It doesn't really matter. You're entitled to your opinion. And if I don't click well with you, it's fine. I'll find someone else who I click well with. And it doesn't put as much of a pressure on me. And especially when you're going into a situation and you don't have that pressure on your shoulders anymore, it makes it a lot easier for you to then be able to communicate with other people, because you're less nervous. But yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that helped me, because even recently I had a interview for something, and I didn't have an interview in so long, and I hadn't been in that situation where I didn't know anyone for so long, and so when I went in, I was starting to feel a bit nervous. But then I just sat down and I started talking to people, and it was fine. So yeah, I think in those situations, having confidence kind of comes from your like we talked about, kind of abilities in yourself and knowing who you are and that type of thing, but also going in there and being like, I can talk to these people also don't know anyone here, and it's a good opportunity to try and meet someone new.
Yeah, I think people who lack confidence probably will resonate with this. It's the fear of being alone. You don't want to be alone in the situation, because you automatically perceive everyone's got their cliques, and you don't want to be someone that's isolated. But it's not the case. You just have to go and say salam or say hi.
Yeah.
Most people that are kind are going to include you, and if they don't include you, then you don't really want to be around that people
100%.
anyways.
Yeah.
So it's a filter for you regardless.
That's a good way of thinking about it too. Okay, I mean, let's talk now kind of a bit about confidence in professional settings. I think the aspect that I more wanted to go into this was confidence about speaking up when things aren't right, or when things aren't going the way we feel like it should be going. So a lot of people, even people who you would see as confident, struggle with being able to talk about issues in a professional environment. I mean, what do you think about that?
I think I've had a very direct experience of this. I had my previous job. I was in a school where someone didn't treat me right. I felt it was very Islamophobic, or it was racist. And I found it very difficult to manage those feelings, because I think a lot of people can resonate with this. Sometimes it's very covert, and you don't want to amplify that when you're speaking to someone else, because you feel that these people are going to dilute it. So I think for me, in that situation, I felt, how am I going to bring this up? And unfortunately, at that time, someone in my team spoke on my behalf, and I know they expressed how they thought it was just nothing, that it was just something very insignificant. But to me, it was very significant, because they're not from my background, and they're not Muslim, and they're not ethnically anywhere near to what I am. And so therefore, when this happened, I thought, let me sleep on it, let me think about it, let me reflect on it, because reacting in the same moment isn't a good thing either. I think to kind of think about what happened to me in a processed way, and enable to think, okay, actually this was very Islamophobic. It wasn't one instance, it was a repetition of events in that one day, and so therefore I've come to this conclusion, and I felt this way, and it's out of order. And I remember when I was reporting this, I felt this sense of fear that what my team members are going to perceive of me is going to jeopardize the working relationship with this institution. And some people did make me feel like that. Is it worth actually reporting it? Because I was reporting at someone against someone who was very, very, very senior in that institution, extremely senior, the most senior person in that institution. And so for that person, for me to give my account to that was really difficult. But then I think that was the first time I had a very honest conversation with my manager, and I said, it's not just about me, it's about having accountability. If you ever have another colleague who has the same background as me, and especially the area that we are working in, social mobility, if they're made to feel like that, then how the students in that school are going to be felt? Those two students saw what I experienced very directly, so they're not going to be inspired to become teachers because they just saw the disrespect that I experienced. And then on the other hand, it's the colleagues. There's the in terms of understanding how professional dynamics working. If you cannot address a member of staff who's experienced something like that, and you claim to be the forefront of social mobility, then where does the values lie? So for me, it was really difficult. Some of my team members were very, very supportive, and they really wanted to make sure to see it through, especially for some of the management, because obviously it's unacceptable. And I think that was the first moment where I stood up for myself, even though there was people around me that were saying, is it actually worth reporting? To second guess myself. And I think confidence was really important in that moment, because I wasn't really thinking about myself only. I was thinking about, but I don't want someone who will get this job afterwards to feel the same way. And I felt really proud of myself, because it was a very difficult conversation, because you're grappling with those feelings where someone just really was Islamophobic to you or racist to you consistently, and in front of a huge audience as well. You just had to manage those feelings, and then on top of that, you have to go justify yourself to another board of people. So I think for me, in my personal experience, I feel like it's so important to have that sense of belief, and I think it's important not to respond straight away. I think it's important to think about what you're going to say, to think about it rationally, and I think it's really important to as well why the concept of ihsan, excellence, because I felt that I tried my best in this job and I haven't given them any scope to complain about me. I've given my 100% because I really believe in this concept of ihsan, excellence, and so therefore, if I'm saying this is happening to me, then there's no way that they can think that I'm something that's going to become out of thin air, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's the case. Even if you have a very bad reputation and something's happened to you, people are going to go through your reputation. Unfortunately, that's how the world works. And that's not to say you don't have a right to report it. You 100% do. But I think that as Muslims, I think the reason why there's so much focus on character and there's so much focus on excellence is because it allows you to have a standing when things do go wrong, because no one can say anything about your character. And we can see that through our prophetic tradition, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he was known for his character. It was so difficult, and it's in Surah Furqan, they couldn't say anything about him because he was so trustworthy. He had excellent character, so they just had to make things up. They had to say he's a magician, and that's described in the Quran, in Surah Furqan. So I think a couple of things there. I think it's so important to make sure that you're giving your best and you're striving for excellent character. And so therefore, when these situations do arise, you're able to stand up, because in Islam, even if you should stand against injustice, even if it's against yourself. Yeah. So if no one's supporting you, you know that you're fighting against injustice, and you just believe that Allah will take care of you. Yeah. That was a very long thought process, but
there were a lot of important things said, and kind of bringing it back to standing up in a professional setting. I think you talked about and discussed how difficult it really is to do that, especially when there's people who are blocking you. But not only that, there's the aspect of seniority. I think on that note, what I want to say is we have seniority in loads of different institutions, but just because someone has a senior position doesn't mean that you are not allowed to say anything against that person, or doesn't mean you're not allowed to say anything to that person. Because frankly, from a worker level, I feel like we're all the same in that regard. We all have a right to having good working conditions. We all have a right to, not be affected by things like this at work. And that is, if you kind of have that look and out view on it, it kind of helps make it a bit easier to approach those conversations, because frankly, this is your right. I feel like a load of us struggle with it because and I'll talk about university again because that's currently where I'm at. People struggle with bringing their opinions forth to management and things like that because they're management, or because these are people who already have very high level professions, or they're very senior.
And they're scared about the consequences. They think that their job will be jeopardized, or their grades will be hindered.
100%. This is very true. It's a real worry because you think, actually, these people could affect me in some way. But the fact of the matter is I think generally we need to start having a bit more confidence in what we're saying and the visions that we're trying to push through. Because at the end of the day, like you said, it's not just for us. It's for the betterment of everything that we're striving for. And we are allowed to do it.
And I think as Muslims, we have that safety net that we know we're in the correct stance. And so therefore, if someone is mistreating you and you reported it and they continue to mistreat you, then Allah values it enough. So why should you stay in that situation? It might be difficult at that moment where you might not have the financial means or etc. But He will provide you another way because you stood up for injustice.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, look at your own situation and see what is good. And I really appreciate that you said think about it, because confidence doesn't just mean being able to say whatever you want straight away in that moment. A lot of us will fumble with our words, and when a situation happens, it's very difficult to process all the emotions that are going on. So I like the fact that you said think about it first, think about what you want to do about it, and think about what you want out of this situation. And that's definitely the best way to go about it. In terms of building up that confidence, I think, what's the best way to build up confidence in professional settings? I mean, how would you say?
I think to build your confidence in professional settings, you need to first build confidence in yourself personally. Okay. So you need to be able to have introspection and think about, okay, where are the things that are your blind spots? Where is the areas that you need to improve on? And then do these things in your personal life. Yeah. So if you lack confidence in public speaking, then go to places where you're even networking, like we just mentioned, because that's public speaking. You have to go speak to someone you don't even know. Yeah. Start off very small. And then after that, once you kind of made a list of areas that you want to improve, then you can apply that to work because the fundamentals are kind of taken care of. Yeah. And then you can have that conversation with your manager. This is where I see myself in the future. What training opportunities are there? How can I improve myself? I want to be able to develop this certain skill. I think that kind of just flows afterwards. But if you're not within yourself, don't have that belief, then it's very difficult to create that in the professional setting because you're one person and you have to think about that. You're one person. So you need to think about yourself personally first before you go to you think about professional settings.
Yeah, that's very good. That's a good way to build the basis. And then in terms of moving from that, I know you said talking to your manager and things like that. I feel like that all falls under the bracket of acquiring knowledge about what it is that you want to do. So whether that be you want to advance in your career, or whether that be something's happened and that's upset you and you want to be able to do something about it or report it, having the knowledge of the clear ways of going about doing that really equips you to be able to put whatever it is you want to do into action. So yeah, I feel like a lot of us kind of go through various aspects of life, whether that be work or things like that, without actually knowing what to do when things go wrong.
Conflict management,
yeah, exactly.
I don't think those things are taught to us, and that's something that me and you discussed as well in terms of like taking care of our internal wounds. I think that's kind of a separate discussion, but I think really understanding ourselves is fundamental if you want to become confident.
Okay, so I guess that is the main point of today's show, is being confident in yourself helps to bring confidence in other aspects of your life. And the way in which you can start to develop that is through a lot of introspection, which is Maryam's favorite thing. And it's something we should all do a bit more of, I feel. So looking back, reflecting at ourselves and finding kind of things that you want to develop, things that you're already doing well and things that you can continue to do well, kind of propagate those things more in your life. And that will help with confidence. Okay, so we've discussed quite a few different things. I guess, Maryam, what's the one main thing that you'll be doing from this point on to get to the point of confidence that you want to achieve?
I think I'm just going to continue this journey of trying to improve myself in terms of areas that I feel need improving. So like I mentioned, I'm going to try to keep going to events. And I'm not going to go to events that are people who are like-minded, because that's what I did last year. This year I'm going to go to areas that I've never thought about, to get wider depth in those things.
Great stuff. Okay, we love that. Thank you for joining us on today's show, Maryam, and thank you all for listening. And we'll see you next week, inshallah, with another show. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Why not tune in to our live stream at inspirefm.org and follow and subscribe to our social media platforms at Inspire FM Luton.